unthinkable may at least become thinkable. 1948 The preliminary draft of a world constitution is published by U.S. educators advocating regional federation on the way toward world federation or government, with England incorporated into a European federation. The Constitution provides for a World Council, along with a Chamber of Guardians, to enforce world law. Also included is a preamble calling upon nations to surrender their arms to the world government, and includes the right of this Federal Republic of the World to seize private property for federal use. February 9, 1950 The Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee introduces Senate Concurrent Resolution 66, which begins, whereas, in order to achieve universal peace and justice, the present Charter of the United Nations should be changed to provide a true world government constitution. The resolution was first introduced in the Senate on September 13, 1949 by Senator Glenn Taylor D. Idaho. Senator Alexander Wiley R. Wisconsin called it a consummation devoutly to be wished for, and said, "I understand your proposition is either change the United Nations or change or create, by a separate convention, a world order." Senator Taylor later stated, "We would have to sacrifice considerable sovereignty to the World Organization to enable them to levy taxes in their own right to support themselves." April 12, 1952 John Foster Dulles, later to become Secretary of State, says in a speech to the American Bar Association in Louisville, Kentucky, that treaty laws can override the Constitution. He says treaties can take power away from Congress and give them to the President. They can take powers from the states and give them to the federal government or to some international body, and they can cut across the rights given to the people by their constitutional Bill of Rights. A Senate amendment, proposed by GOP Senator John Brecker, would have provided that no treaty could supersede the Constitution, but it fails to pass by one vote. 1954 Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands establishes the Bilderbergers, international politicians and bankers who meet secretly on an annual basis. 1958 World Peace Through World Law is published, where authors Grenville Clark and Louis Son advocate using the UN as a governing body for the world disarmament, a world police force and legislature. 1959 The Council on Foreign Relations calls for a new international order. Study number 7, issued on November 25, advocated new international order which must be responsive to world aspirations for peace, for social and economic change. An international order, including states labeling themselves as socialist, communist. 1959 The World Constitution and Parliament Association is founded, which later develops a diagram of world government under the Constitution for the Federation of Earth. 1959 The Mid-Century Challenge to U.S. Foreign Policy is published, sponsored by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. It explains that the U.S. cannot escape, and indeed should welcome, the task which history has imposed on us. This is the task of helping to shape a new world order in all its dimensions spiritual, economic, political, social. September 9, 1960 President Eisenhower signs Senate Joint Resolution 170, promoting the concept of a federal Atlantic Union. Pollster and Atlantic Union Committee Treasurer Elmo Roper later delivers an address titled, "The Goal is Government of All the World," in which he states, "For it becomes clear that the first step toward world government cannot be completed until we have advanced on the four fronts: the economic, the military, the political, and the social." 1961 The U.S. State Department issues a plan to disarm all nations and arm the United Nations. State Department document number 7277 is entitled Freedom from War: The U.S. Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. It details a three-stage plan to disarm all nations and arm the UN, with the final stage in which no state would have the military power to challenge the progressively strengthened UN peace force. 1962-New Calls for World Federalism. In a study titled, A World Effectively Controlled by the United Nations, CFR member Lincoln Bloomfield states, if the communist dynamic was greatly abated, the West might lose whatever incentive it has for world government. The Future of Federalism by author Nelson Rockefeller is published. The one-time governor of New York claims that current events compellingly demand a new world order, as the old order is crumbling, and there is a new and free order struggling to be born. Rockefeller says there is a fever of nationalism, but the nation-state is becoming less and less competent to perform its international political tasks. These are some of the reasons pressing us to lead vigorously toward the true building of a new world order, with voluntary service and our dedicated faith in the brotherhood of mankind. Sooner perhaps than we may realize, there will evolve the basis for a federal structure of the free world. 1963-J. William Fulbright, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, speaks at a symposium sponsored by the Fund for the Republic, a left-wing project of the Ford Foundation. The case for government by elites is irrefutable. Government by the people is possible but highly improbable. 1964-Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, Handbook 2 is published. Author Benjamin Bloom states, a large part of what we call good teaching is the teacher's ability to attain effective objectives through challenging the student's fixed beliefs. His outcome-based education method of teaching would first be tried as mastery learning in Chicago schools. After 5 years, Chicago students' test scores had plummeted, causing outrage among parents. Would leave a trail of wreckage wherever it would be tried and under whatever name it would be used. At the same time, it would become crucial to globalists for overhauling the education system to promote attitude changes among school students. 1964-Visions of Order by Richard Weaver is published. He describes progressive educators as a revolutionary cabal engaged in a systematic attempt to undermine society's traditions and beliefs. 1967- Richard Nixon calls for a new world order in Asia after Vietnam. In the October issue of Foreign Affairs, Nixon writes of nations' dispositions to evolve regional approaches to development needs and to the evolution of a new world order. 1968- Joy Elmer Morgan, former editor of the NIA Journal, publishes the American Citizen's Handbook, in which he says, the coming of the United Nations and the urgent necessity that it evolve into a more comprehensive form of world government places upon the citizens of the United States an increased obligation to make the most of their citizenship, which now widens into active world citizenship. July 26, 1968- Nelson Rockefeller pledges support of the New World Order. In an Associated Press report, Rockefeller pledges that, as president, he would work toward international creation of a new world order. 1970- Education and the mass media promote world order. In Thinking About a New World Order for the Decade 1990, author Ian Baldwin, Jr. asserts that the World Law Fund has begun a worldwide research and educational program that will introduce a new, emerging discipline world order into educational curricula throughout the world, and to concentrate some of its energies on bringing basic world order concepts into the mass media again on a worldwide level. 1972- President Nixon visits China. In his toast to Chinese Premier Chu Enlai, former CFR member and now President, Richard Nixon, expresses the hope that each of us has to build a new world order.